into the second hour. In 30 minutes, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts joins us to break down the fact that U.S. troops are being deployed for possible military action backing up Israel in an attack on Iran. We're going to be breaking all of that down. I've also got a lot of economic news I want to go over. I also want to look at General Motors deal moves electric car development to China, a shakedown. It's like that with every one of these bailouts. You pay to move it to Brazil or China. These are globalists that hate America that run our country and who want to use our tax money to help them dominate the globe. Have people figured this out yet? We're going to be getting into that and a lot more coming up. And we also have Greg Hunter, a reporter, joining us to look at evidence of election fraud in Iowa ahead into New Hampshire and other primaries. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. Let's go ahead and go to some of your calls. Jim in Texas, welcome, sir.
Hey, Alex, it's great to be on with you again.
Great to have you.
Hey, I wanted to comment on the Iran situation and two other things real quick, if I can get them in.
Sure.
First off, my opinions don't reflect that of the Department of Defense. I have worked in military intelligence active duty. I'm a combat veteran. I'm currently in the National Guard right now, but my views on Iran are open source, and they can be heard in all the intelligence communities. This is an attack we've been getting ready for quite some time. This is an attack that nobody in the military that I know wants to fight. And it's everything you say is true, Alex. I can't really refute anything.
And what is, from open source, what are you expecting the attack to be? A joint strike? Or after Iran retaliates, then the U.S. gets involved?
Well, of course, we can look at our history as a nation, from the USS Maine to other instances, and we can pretty easily deduct that we're probably going to probably experience some sort of quote-unquote attack in the Strait of Hormuz, and then retaliate.
Why would the Iranians, we know Cheney, it came out in New York Magazine, did admittedly want to paint up U.S. patrol boats, have Navy SEALs do a mock attack on a ship that didn't know it was mock attack, and let the SEALs, perhaps even get killed, to blame it on Iran. But why would Iran shoot their mouth off and say, don't come back through here with your carriers, this is your last warning? Why would their head of intelligence, here it is out of the Israeli Daily, Israeli National News, but it was also in Iranian news, Iran threatens street war in Tel Aviv and U.S. I mean, that's just doing exactly what the globalists want. And
we've got heroes like Fox Fallon, who saved us back in 2007. And Iran is, their intelligence is spot on. They know what's going on. They know our history. And it's a scary proposition that a lot of soldiers are afraid of. That's why you see so much support for Ron Paul. And real quick, Alex, there's a former Army Ranger captain named Antonio Buehler who lives in the Austin area. And he's a strong advocate for Ron Paul, combat veteran. He was assaulted by the police on New Year's Eve. You can just go on YouTube and find that. The local Austin station has already done a story. It's on video, and we need to support him. And
what happened to
really
Antonio Buehler is his name?
Yeah, he's a West Point graduate, former Army captain.
Tony Buehler, what'd they do to him?
Well, he was standing up for a girl who was being ripped out of her car by Austin cops at the gas station. He was totally sober, and he was taken down for protecting a fellow citizen.
Wow, stay there. I want to hear more about what you're hearing about an attack on Iran and then this Tony Buehler report. We're pulling it up. I guess Jaron says he's already seen it, so that is a confirmed report. We'll get to other calls. Stay with us. All right, we are now 8 minutes into the second hour. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts joining us at the bottom of the hour to break down, well, this news. The Israeli newspapers, including Jerusalem Post, are reporting thousands of U.S. troops are being deployed, not going there for an exercise, but deployed. And there are other reports here out of the New York Times, Debka File, and others Saudis, Gulf states on war alert for early U.S.-Iran clash. Here is the New York Times. Oil prices would skyrocket if Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. It continues. The deployment of thousands of U.S. troops to Israel, the interrogation of U.S.-Israeli command structures. They're now integrating the U.S.-Israeli command structures. We're going to be breaking all of that down. But going back to Jim in Texas, who was saying he was in Army intelligence, now he's in the National Guard, and he was saying this is all open source, what he was saying, but that, yes, they're getting ready to attack Iran. I want you to elaborate on that, because that's what all my military sources are saying, and now it's pretty much mainstream, fact. They're just making it a foregone conclusion and getting ready for the domestic checkpoints and actually setting some up and passing the Martial Law Enabling Act, NDAA, and power grabbing with recess appointments. The government pretty much does whatever it wants, because they think once they kick off something that could lead to World War III, everything is going to be just fine. Now, let's go ahead and go back to Jim in Texas. Jim, finish your point on that, and then tell us the story of what happened in Austin.
Well, Alex, you do a great job of spreading the truth. Operation Ajax, Operation Northwoods, USS Liberty, Operation Gladio, they are all open source case studies that, guys like myself and guys that I've served with in the intelligence units, we look at that, and it becomes more than obvious to all of us what goes on behind the scenes. Now, a lot of us don't take part in stuff like that. We're there serving God and country. And but these examples are more than out in the open. You mentioned Cheney in 2007. Fox Fallon stood up to him. He basically got axed for that, just like Lemitzer did under JFK for Northwoods. And then you got guys like Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer that works in the same branch of military intelligence I do, and he does a great job of sharing the open source with everybody else. But then, even some of the open source gets redacted when he writes that book. So it's really a battle that you are helping, guys like me and guys like Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer win here in the public eye.
Well, that's right. Colonel Schaefer has come out, and he has basically endorsed Ron Paul's analysis of what's happening with Iran. And there's a reason that Benjamin Netanyahu had to fire the head of Mossad last year when he told him it would be, quote, a catastrophe to attack Iran. He said it again 2 weeks ago in the Jerusalem Post and Haaretz. Most Israelis, the polls are between 50, 60, 70%, but they vary, but it's around half or more, depending on which poll you look at. They don't want this war. And it's not like the former head of the Mossad's a fan of Iran. They know that it's going to unify the entire Arab world. They're going to end up basically launching a giant attack through surrogates against Israel. But see, that's what some of the leadership in Israel and the U.S. and Europe want, because it'll be a diversion. The big crisis will be a diversion from the banker bailouts, the banking takeovers, the carbon taxes, the police state, the fast and furious. And it will allow them to take even more liberties, because they know people tend to rally around the flag once a big war starts. I mean, if our ships are getting blown up and there's just an all-out huge war, it won't be like the military just going in and killing a bunch of, starving Iraqis and then a few troops get killed. When the U.S. is really in a serious war with a lot of casualties, people tend to just say, well, I don't like the war, but we got to get behind them. And it's going to be horrible. They have maneuvered us into this position. And again, it's not our government. Foreign interests run our government. Globalists run our government. Globalists run Israel. And they want this new giant war with Iran. And I go back to Iran and the current mullahs being flown in by the CIA in '79. People are like, are you kidding? Yeah, just like Al-Qaeda was given Libya. I mean, 20 years from now, will I be saying, remember Libya was given to Al-Qaeda by NATO? People are like, oh, yeah, right. It's a fact. Folks know that now because it's been in the news. 20 years from now, people may not remember. But in '79, now 30-plus years ago, they brought them in, and they claim there was double-crossing going on. But they used the same radicals to overthrow Mossadegh in '53. So this could all just be saber-rattling. I mean, at a certain point, don't think Iran works with the globalists, but I know with Iran-Contra, they got missiles and things, you know, in deals secretly. And our government used drug money, cocaine money in the U.S. to be able to buy those weapons off record. That's all on record. So what do you think? What do your colleagues think about what's going on?
Well, they're scared to death that, you know, we might be called to go to war with Iran. Because Iran, like you mentioned, it's not Iraq. It's not Afghanistan. It's a much different threat. They know what's going on. And, you know, some of the toll that we've taken, I tried to get on the other day when you had Dr. Doug Rocky on. One of my friends who, I can't name his name, he doesn't want his story going out, but he hasn't even made it to 30 yet, and he's riddled with cancer. He's going to die. It started off as thyroid cancer. He's going to die. And a lot of us, you know, we've been exposed to all sorts of depleted uranium. We slept in craters from the first Gulf War that were just completely just laced with radiation. I've had stuff removed from my body. And what we have to understand as soldiers, if there's any soldiers out there listening right now that still support some of these monsters like Gingrich or Santorum, Draft Dodger Newt, we have to understand that we are being led to slaughter. They don't care about us anymore. Guys like Dr. Doug Rocky, they give their life. How many operations does the guy have to 30-some, and members of his team are dead? This is all going to happen to us, and if we don't stand up and become a vocal minority, this country is going to go away.
Well, I'll tell you, this DU issue, Jim, explains it all. When in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, I've researched the entire history of it, interviewed all the experts, not just Doug Rocky, who's the top expert, literally wrote the book for the Pentagon in the mid-90s on it, and the previous reports in the 80s, physicists, you name it. You know, couple PhDs. They would never let them use it. They had it as a byproduct of making atomic and hydrogen bombs. They were going to have to store it. And it wasn't up until the 90s or so that they went ahead, kind of like it took 3 tries for Rumsfeld to get aspartame approved. In the 60s, 70s, they failed. He got it approved in 1980. Very toxic, but nothing compared to DU. But the point is that by the early 90s, they just went ahead and started using it as forklift ballast, aircraft ballast, weapon system, tips, armor piercing, all of this. But previous to that, they said you can never use this because it ignites in the barrel and it gives people slow kill dosages to use any of it. Now it's used at proving grounds everywhere. Now it's used all over the place, and it shows all these people that claim all day how they love the troops and don't say the war is wrong or I'll punch you in the nose. Don't say that killing somebody for oil or whatever is wrong, or I'll punch you in the nose. Our troops were all patriotic. They want war. No, they don't. That's why CNN cut the feed when that guy in uniform was up there talking about that. He's like, well, you're a hero. You've been in for 10 years, 2 tours, highly decorated. And he said, yeah, and I don't want this war. Boom, they cut the feed. Now we found other incidents where they do the same thing. That's because they want this image that you support the troops by treating them like garbage. And they could find people that kind of buy into all this and will go along with it. But it is a scourge on the military, and we have a responsibility to make sure DU is not used. God bless you, and I appreciate your call. Steve in Illinois, you're on the air. Go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Okay, Alex. 2 quick history lessons. One might want to delve into pre-World War II Germany and see how the squeeze play was being put on Hitler and the Nazis. No wonder he come to such a high rise so solidly, because the people had had enough. It's almost a blueprint of what's going on in this country today. Number 2, the United Nations was started 45. They had this figured out. We didn't know it. That in 65 years, Roosevelt got us so we could retire at 65, and you add 65 years to 1945, and what do you got? 2010. That's when they started grabbing all these pensions and everything. And
sir, it was our Pentagon